Welcome to the podcast, Kerry. I'm so happy to have you.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. I'm so happy to be here and spend some time with you today.
Yes, I would love for you to share your story. First of all, I love fertility yoga. I always suggest for my patients and my clients to do it. It's something that I've personally myself have been really transformed by yoga in general. Many different types of yoga, a huge believer in it. And I also think that I call it an intelligent exercise. It's something that's been around for thousands of years and really is a medicine in its own. So I would love for you to share your story and how you personally went through your own journey, but also how you combined fertility with yoga.
Okay, yeah. I'll try and be a little bit concise because I could go on and on for a long time about this topic. But as many listeners out there, I didn't really start thinking about having kids till I was in my mid 30s. I took me a while to find the person I wanted to share my DNA with, right? So when I did and we got married, we moved to Germany, and we went to Germany with the intention of like, this would be a good time for me to have kids. He's going to do his PhD. Germany has so many great social supports for families and so on. So we're like, oh, let's just like skim the cream off the top of that social system. And so when we got there, as often happens, things don't go as planned, right? When it comes to fertility. So we rolled into IUI. So we tried for 6 months. We found a clinic, and we lived in old Eastern Germany. So it was hard to find English speaking doctors. So it was a very interesting time of my life. Not only was it just stressful in general dealing with what's going on and like, is this ever going to happen, to living in another culture, another country. I didn't have a ton of support around, but then trying to navigate a new language that I was not fluent in at all. So
Wow.
I had one amazing friend there who spoke fluent German, American woman, and she's like, I will help you. And she went into those appointments with me.
Oh,
Did
wow.
all
That's
the
incredible. What
translation.
a great friend.
I know. It was so amazing because I was so lost at that time trying to figure out like just what's going on, but then how to say it in a different language or understand it in a different language. So for anybody who's doing this fertility journey overseas or is here in North America and it's not your mother tongue English and you're trying to figure it out, I see you. I understand how this can add an extra level of stress to it. So during that time, I actually went and did a yoga teacher training because I was like, this isn't working. I want to do something for myself. So let's go get a yoga teacher training. I'd actually been teaching yoga for years before. So I've been teaching yoga for 20 years, far before this, all these 200-hour yoga teacher trainings that, you can sign up for one, no problem now. But back then it was your teacher tapped you on the shoulder and said, hey, do you want to be like, let's do this. And so that's kind of how I started yoga. But then when I was in Germany, I was like, okay, let's make this legit, right? Let's go get the training. I love it. I was teaching in Germany and so on. So that was sort of the main integration of the yoga into the fertility journey, was just taking that bigger step to get the certification. And then, yeah, we did IUIs. The first IUI was successful, and then I got pregnant, and 10-week ultrasound. There was no heartbeat, so we lost that baby.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and it was, again, different culture, different bedside manners, different. It was just so stark. That's the word I could use for it. Shocking. It was just like, okay, the baby has no heartbeat. We're booking you in tomorrow for a D&C. Be there at 6 a.m. There was no time to to
To
absorb what
grieve.
was, to
Yeah.
breathe, to
Yeah.
figure out what I wanted. Like, it was just like this snowball that was just like, okay, this has happened. You're going to do this. You're going to be better. Then you're going to start again and you're going to keep trying and trying. So that's a whole other rabbit hole we could go down. um, but yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. And so we ended up going to do IVF. And this was, 15 years ago. So things were maybe a little different than they are now. Like ICSI was just sort of more of a thing, right? It's like, ooh, we're going to do this new cool thing, ICSI. I was like, okay. And they're like, and then there's embryo glue, and we'll glue your embryo to your uterus, right? And it was all cutting edge at this time. And we did it. We did many cycles, frozen cycles, fresh cycles. Yeah, so many cycles, and nothing stuck, right? Had been doing IVF for 2 years, and we kind of just paused and said, do we want to keep doing this? Like, is this how we envision our life to be? And we wanted kids for sure, but we also wanted to start living our lives again. So that was a very pivotal moment in our journey, is when we stepped away from IVF. We said, okay, we're done. I had gained weight. I wasn't feeling like myself. My body was weirdly puffy in different places. And I was unhappy and I was emotional. And I was just like, let's walk away. And I remember my fertility doctor at the time, he said, your chances of getting pregnant naturally are like 1 in like 100 million. Like, you shouldn't be walking away from IVF. And I was like, I'm okay. Like, I need a break. And I walked away, and a month and a half later, I was pregnant.
Wow.
Without intervention. And then 9 months postpartum, I also was pregnant again by accident, because we thought we had our miracle baby, right? So we were like, okay, whatever. And then I was pregnant again. And through the whole journey, I was using yoga for my body, but more so for my energetic health, my mental, emotional health. So when we ended up coming back to the US and moving to Boston, that was one of the first things I did. I did a prenatal yoga teacher training, and I said, hey, can we do fertility yoga? And she's like, sure. I have no idea what it is. Tell me what it is. I'm like, either do I, but I'll get back to you. And that's sort of how the fertility yoga started. And nobody was really doing it 8 years ago. It's
true.
Like, there was nothing. There was a few people. There was a couple books out on it. But I really spent a lot of time explaining what it was that we were trying to do when we were doing like a fertility focused yoga practice. So that's kind of the story. That's the evolution.
Well, I love the story. I don't love that it was that you went through the suffering through the story, but I love the fact that you can prove with your story that when people tell you, when you hear from doctors that you have 1 in a million chance or whatever that is not necessarily the truth. That is their opinion. They say it very factually.
Yes.
And I think that that's where it gets very confusing for people. They say it very factually. And I'm not dismissing what doctors say, because a lot of times it could be very accurate, or they can, but what I don't love is when things are predicted, because the body can be so unpredictable, and
So
it can
true.
also show so many signs that defy what it's going to do. So that's where, I say just have an open mind, or getting a second opinion is great. So, but I do love hearing those stories, because I think when people who are going through that now and are probably listening to fertility podcasts because they want to get answers and hear other people's stories, and when they hear stories like that, it sparks some hope in their hearts. So I think that that's really important.
Yeah, I often get students, they'll ask me, well, like, what was it? Like, Right, because this is what we want. This is like
This is
people
true.
don't want to do IVF if they don't have to. And they're like, "What was it? Like, what happened?" And I was like, "I cannot tell you. I can't tell you 100% that it was the yoga that I was doing or, all the other lifestyle changes I was doing, but something came together magically all together at the right time and this baby happened." And if I had to choose one word for it, it would be exhale, because there was this feeling that my body was no longer having to perform, like it felt safe because I wasn't
Oh, yeah.
going
That's a good
in
word.
for all these procedures, and like they're minimally invasive, but you're still like vaginal ultrasounds and people poking around down
It's true.
there and all the operations that come with it, anesthesia, all those sorts of things. And yeah, it's a lot. So my body was like, whew, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let me just be. And I think the mental piece was just like that I wasn't gonna go back to it at least anytime soon. So my body was actually believing me,
Yeah.
right? And I don't think it's something that you can fake. It's not a time like I had to go through those 2 years of IVF and pregnancy loss to get to that point. I don't think that there's we can't just kind of skip over it and be like, oh, I'm just going to think this now and that
Yeah.
I'm going to get pregnant naturally. So it's a process. Everybody's journey is different, and we just need to give ourselves a little bit of space sometimes to integrate what's going on and give our bodies that exhale, which is so important.
I love that you say that, because actually exhaling longer can stimulate your not sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest mode,
Exactly.
which
Mhm.
many times the majority of us in response to life are in the fight or flight mode. And especially when we feel unsafe. And I love that you use the word safe, because when we feel unsafe, then we're really not in a creative mode. We don't create even like mentally when we're not feeling safe.
Yeah.
When we feel safe, we're able to create, we're able to let go, and our body's able to create. And that's it's a state of growth. So I love that you talk about that. And I think that one of the commonalities between yoga and acupuncture, which actually they're related in many ways, and
Sure.
because it's
Yeah.
really about moving the energy,
Hmm.
because yoga is connected to Ayurveda. Ayurveda has marma points, and yoga is actually a branch of Ayurveda. It's part of the medicine of the physicality of the body and moving the energy.
Yep.
Whereas Qigong is sort of the yoga of Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
very related. And I think one of the biggest commonalities, or one of the ways I think it really works, is it's all about the nervous system.
100%.
Yeah.
The nervous system, like even these days, when I'm talking to somebody, I'm like, I'm talking to a person, yes, but I'm interacting with the nervous system. So with the words that I'm saying, my body language, or how I look at them, right? Like it all is interacting with their nervous system. So how are we working with nervous systems? And when we show up in fertility world supporting people, um, for me, the huge part of fertility yoga is how do we harness this parasympathetic, I call it rest, digest, and reproduce. That's what I call it, just to
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
remind
I love
everybody.
that. Yes.
um, because what it is, it
RDR.
RDR, right?
Yep.
So it's what yoga is so good at. Sadly, right? Like our Western culture view of yoga has been a little um, focused almost exclusively on exercise and
Hmm.
gymnastic
True.
style yoga. Um, but really, traditionally, like you said, it was about the marma. It was about the energetic lines running through you, and wherever you find that imbalance, you can work with the energetic field to create balance again. And as you know, the marma points and acupuncture and pressure points are like following very similar lines. And it's powerful, but it's subtle, right? Like it's
Right.
hard
It's
to
hidden. It's
explain.
hidden.
Yeah, like it's hard to explain exactly what's happening. But it's so powerful, and it can really be transformative for how we navigate the journey as embracing that the quiet side of things.
Yes. And I think that the way we connect with it is through feeling,
Mm,
because that is ultimately how we do it. But we can't feel or pay attention to what we're feeling when we're distracted all the time by the noise of the world.
the
So we're
noise.
constantly disrupted by the noise. It's very disrupting actually for our nervous system. We don't realize it because we're so used to it. You could be
Mhm.
used to things that are really not healthy for you. And
Oh,
listen,
yes.
hearing the outside noise and the loud noises of construction, the normal life, if you're living in the city, the constant sirens and honking, and those things are actually very taxing on the nervous
Mhm.
system, and they put us in a fight or flight mode because
Yeah.
our bodies don't really recognize them isn't in the natural world. So it stimulates a more fight and flight response. So having that counterbalance with practices like yoga in calming the nervous system. And what I love about yoga is that it includes breath, all the things that really stimulate the vagus nerve, mantra, sound. So you're able to tune your vibration, and breath, which is also very calming because if you exhale longer, like there's certain controlled breath where you're able to control your brain through breath, and even movement, somatic energy work and emotions that we can at least much more easily like not control, but like manage with our bodies.
Yeah. I couldn't say it better myself, Michelle. That was perfect. I think one thing, right, like we know that the fertility journey is stressful. We know that life is stressful. We know that we're probably living in a heightened state, in our sympathetic more than we would like to. And yeah, the yoga piece can just hit so many things. And one thing we need to remember is that we are created like evolutionarily are we are more attuned to the stresses, right, for survival. So
True.
the
Yeah.
loud noises, it alerts us to look around and see, oh, is there something coming for me, or the bright lights and things like that. Like we're just constantly, like our bodies are looking out to keep us safe all
Hmm.
the time.
Yeah.
um and we're tuned to that, right? That our bodies are naturally tuned to go in that direction, and there's way more stimuli that will take us that way. And then with the other side, the parasympathetic, we have to work harder and more intentionally to go there. And I think that is one of the things that is the hardest, is like you actually need to train the system to
Hmm.
be more fluid. It's not,
Yeah.
the stress isn't going
It's
to go
true.
away. Stress isn't going to go away. But if you are training your nervous system to float more evenly back and forth between the two, and taking the time to go parasympathetic as best that you can, whether it's with the breath or with yoga or going for a walk in nature or anything like that, um, right, you're rebalancing, but we have to make more effort. That is just the way we're built. And yeah, like things that will help us be calmer are like dim lights,
Hmm.
quietude, support. So, like lying down flat so our body doesn't have to be alert. Like, even sitting, we have to be alert so we
Hmm.
might not fall over. Weight, unless you're claustrophobic, of course.
Hmm.
So, yeah, there's lots of things that we can add. And yoga does that. Restorative yoga, which is a huge piece of how I teach fertility yoga. Um, that is what it does. Like those are the things that we're embracing when we do restorative yoga. Yeah,
I love
it's
restorative yoga.
me too.
Oh, it
Oh,
feels so good. It
I,
really just feels so good. And you know what I love too? I remember taking a yoga class, And the teacher, after we're laying in Shavasana, said, allow the ground to support you. And I'm like,
Mm,
just the thought of that changes my experience laying down right now.
yes. Yes. I say that too in my yoga classes, or I'm
Yeah.
like, the earth is coming up to hold you, and you let the earth hold you. It's like a two-way street. It's like, here I am. I'm here, but you need to let go into it too. Um, yeah, there's so many wonderful things about restorative yoga. I mean, it's not the only part of fertility yoga, the way I teach it, but it is definitely a huge part of what I like to emphasize to help train the nervous system. That, like,
Amazing.
oh, oh, I remember this place of calm and safety, right? And then if we can condition it with, like, at the beginning of every shavasana or every restorative yoga pose, you do 3 big, deep breaths, long exhales. The body then starts to put it all together and say, oh, when she takes 3 big, long, deep breaths,
Mm-hmm.
it's time to relax. It's time to release and let go. So there's so much we could do to support ourselves on that level, I think. But yeah, society makes it hard.
Right. So it's almost like a triggering relaxation response to something that you repeat over and over again. I always say, like, if you do meditation and you burn a specific incense that's
Mm-hmm.
clean, or something that even an essential oil,
Yep.
like diffuse a specific one, every single time you start to meditate, you're immediately going to, it's almost like Pavlov's dog. You're always
Yes.
going to
Yeah.
associate it with meditation time.
Mm-hmm.
And our scent brings us right there because it's
Yeah.
so connected. Our olfactory nerve, which is really responsible for our sense of smell, is
Yep.
connected to our brains directly.
Yeah. And certain smells will be more grounding, and so choose your
True.
smells
Yeah.
wisely. I would say, where like citrus and high notes are a little bit more stimulating, where like the deeper tones like sandalwood and like
Right.
the earthy green trees, those sorts of things, can just be really calming. And then plus the volatile oils that are in evergreen trees are
Mhm.
calming to the nervous system. So
Yeah.
like,
Isn't that amazing?
so why not put those
Yeah.
in your diffuser? Like, use all the tools that you can, and then things smell good, right? Like,
Yeah. Which is like,
it
who
makes
doesn't like
sense. Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So just take people through, like, if they've never really heard of fertility yoga, like, what differentiates fertility yoga from regular yoga
Okay.
or other types of yoga?
Whew. So the first I would say are the people that are in the class. So it is just really dedicated to holding space for those that are trying to conceive. And um, it can be anybody from, oh, I'm just thinking about it, but my periods have been a little weird all my life. Like, I just want to get in tune with my body, to those who have, eighth round of IVF, like really deep into the journey. So I think the community piece is really important because people like to be seen and understood. And when we do a check in at the beginning of our classes, even though it's online and there's all these little squares and so on the Zoom room, people, like, you see people nodding and like, oh, and like sending hearts and doing all the things, and just creating community around that, as opposed to if you went to a regular yoga class and you walked up to your teacher and said, oh, by the way, I'm doing a stim cycle right now. They're not going to know what to do with you. They're not going to know how to keep you safe, nor are they going to know how to nurture that part of the cycle. So that's the second piece, is becoming, or recognizing where you are in your cycle and then matching the energies of that time. So follicular phase is a little more woo woo, like woohoo, right? Springtime, and things, follicles are growing, you have more energy because of the hormones, and ovulation, you're just like the queen bee, right? So these are the energies that we would say, okay, if you're in the follicular phase, you're going to do this twist and so on and blah blah blah. And then you would say, okay, oh, you're in the luteal phase, things are a little quieter, you might be pregnant, you're in the 2-week wait, you're post transfer, you're stimming, like all these things, then we need to be a little quieter. with the body and give the pelvic area a little bit more space. So we would work with that and do some modifications for that. So really following the cycles. So when I'm teaching, I'm constantly, okay, if you're in the follicular phase, you're going to do this. If you're in the luteal phase, you're going to do this.
Right.
So not only am I keeping people safe, but I'm also like finding the nourishing pieces as well. So it's like I'm boosting that energy and keeping you safe where you wouldn't be able to do that in a regular class. And then the movement piece is really just like slow flow, somatic movement. A lot of it's pelvic centered, but not always, because we hold tension in all different places in our body, the chakra system, the energetic system, right? We want it flowing as well as possible for many reasons. So it's lots of ooey gooey, juicy sort of moves in and around the pelvis. Whew. So what else did I forget? Oh, and of course the yoga wisdom part of it, right? The energetics, the wisdom. So I teach, I'm very thematic when I teach. So I will choose a theme and it may come from the yoga. For example, I did a class, or I'm doing a series right now. We're doing an elemental series. So it's 5 weeks. Perfect. 5 elements. Let's do this in yoga anyway, or in Ayurveda. So I'm like, we started with earth. Like, why is earth? Why is grounding important in fertility? Then water and fire and so on. So, yeah, just bringing a new perspective into it, like something to be like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, I get that, like, I need to be grounded and feel safe for fertility to, I don't want to say be boosted, but to feel safe, your body, or to be working at full capacity, whatever is happening in your body needs to feel safe for the fertility hormones. Whew.
I'm sure there's a lot more even that you might not even realize it, because when we feel safe, I mean, there's so many things that our bodies naturally do, and our bodies are so intelligent, and it puts us into a growth cycle in general. Like our bodies are able to regenerate and repair when it feels like it's getting rest, the proper
Yes.
rest. So also, something that I've noticed, and I do have some patients, it's really interesting because it kind of correlates with
Mm.
jaw tension, but it usually correlates with hip
Pel-
tension.
Hip and pelvic floor, probably. Yeah.
Yes. And so that's something that I always think about with fertility yoga is really kind of like getting that area more free because it correlates to the first and second chakra. And the first chakra is really that rooted chakra, the place that we feel safe. And that holds up the second chakra, which is really where our fertility is.
Lives.
So, in order to have that active, it depends on that foundation of safety.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, also the blood flow, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, there's so much. I like
Yeah.
so many things. But yeah, so that somatic slow flow movement that's pelvic centered, of course, it's like it's energetic, like bringing energy in and like moving energy, which is really important when we're in our lifestyle of sitting stagnant a lot of the time. Um, and yeah, the blood flow, like this gentle squeeze and release, right? Like it's constantly bringing in new oxygenated blood into the organs of the pelvis. And I think often in yoga we don't think about the organ level when we're moving our bodies. And that's what I love about the Ayurvedic yoga. It's more like, okay, this is happening in your body. Like, let's look at the liver, right? So you're doing side bends and the liver and the spleen, and just
True.
incorporating more of those like the systems of the body. It's not just about the large muscle groups and releasing tension, which feels
Right.
great and is
True.
lovely and good for energy and marma points and things like that. But we can also work at the organ level and the hormonal level too, right?
Yeah, for sure. And do you also include breathwork, pranayama?
I do. See, I forgot all
Yeah.
the things. So Yeah. So yeah, I do breath work. I don't do like we're gonna do half an hour pranayama every time, but I will integrate breath work or pranayama techniques when they're suited for the theme or what we're doing with our bodies. Sometimes mudra as well. So like
Which is a hand gesture.
which is our hand gesture. Yeah, it's like a seal.
Which again, see, it relates to the meridians and the energetic connections in the body. It's like our body's like a circuit. So
Yeah.
putting our fingers together in certain positions will actually link that circuit and
Mhm.
have it continue.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was never really into mudras for quite a while of my yoga journey. Like I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna stick my fingers together, do whatever, all the things that Jnana Mudra and so on that you see all the time. And then someone actually sat down and I learned and I experimented with like slowly touching your fingers together and then like, do you want to increase something or decrease something, etc. And it was actually very profound. And that energetic piece, I believe it like, and it's, Ayurveda as well and in yoga, energy is the thing that connects. It's the element that connects body and mind.
Yeah.
Right? We're always talking about
Right.
body and mind,
True.
but what is it that's going on to connect those
Yes.
two? It's the energetic body. And pretty soon I'm hoping Western science will get on board. It slowly
It
is,
is.
right?
It's really fascinating. I mean, that's a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza's. He's always talking about like energy frequencies, and he talks about how we can connect. And he does a lot of scientific research on it, actually. So he looks at the brain waves and how they respond to certain meditations and certain um, energy movements. He does also breath, a specific breath, and a lot of people have Kundalini awakenings. That's what it, I mean, he doesn't call it that. He talks about it more scientific, and he talks about chakras. He doesn't call it chakras, he calls it energy centers.
Yeah.
And it's basically the same thing that we've been taught years ago, thousands of years ago. And ultimately, I mean, people are having Kundalini rising. They see this light, they feel this incredible energy just shooting through their spine from the base. It opens up because that's where the
Kundalini
Kundalini, if
is.
people haven't really learned
Mhm.
about that, they say that there's this dormant energy at the root of your spine that's always there, but it's
Mhm.
sleeping. And
Like
so
coiled
sometimes
up
doing,
snake. Yeah.
yep,
The coiled
and when
snake.
we
Yeah.
do breath work or certain types of exercises, it can actually awaken that. When that awakens, a lot of people have spontaneous healing, spontaneous remission.
Mhm.
And it's really fascinating. So his work is also very much based on quantum physics. And if you look at a lot of the old work and teachings of ancient cultures, they describe pretty much what we're learning as
Yeah.
quantum physics. And it ultimately comes down to the fact that we are mostly energy and much, 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 much less matter than we really think we are.
Yes.
We're like
Yeah.
0.000000001. It's like a million, put tons of zeros
Yeah.
and then one. That's how our matter is. And if we actually take it, like the space actually is way more in between the particles in our bodies and just what we see. So it's kind of like an illusion. It's really fascinating. So we really are vibratory beings, which is why vibration sound really impacts our bodies.
Mhm. Yeah. I will. Yes. 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 And um,
I can nerd.
I'm
I
gonna
could
go.
nerd
I'm
out on
gonna.
this like all day long. So
I know. Me too. There's two things I wanted to talk about, but first I want to talk about space and spaciousness, openness, and I often say to my students, like, magic happens in the space.
I love that.
So when we think about the body, like we need space in our body, openness, spaciousness for our body to function, right? Like between the synapses, there's a little gap, right? It's tiny, but
I
it's
love
there.
that. That's such a
And
great.
that we need to have space, like the womb. Let's not forget, like that is space,
Oh
openness,
yes, I love
spaciousness, right?
that.
There's space. We have to have space in our digestive tract and air and things like that to keep it moving. And now I'm like going off the deep end, and also Ayurveda, of course, right? Like anything that is moving in our body is the air and ether element.
Mm-hmm.
And ether is spaciousness, it's openness. And so I often emphasize this idea in class of creating space. When we move our pelvis, we're creating space. We're opening up. We're releasing blocked energy, if you will, or like stagnant blood. Like we are getting things moving. And when things are moving, the magic happens, right? Like the space, we need that spaciousness. Whew, yeah,
I
I
love
love
that.
space. Yeah, the
Well,
ether.
it's so cool. I mean, because that's one of the things that Joe Dispenza does is he almost puts you in an induction with his meditations, and he says space, and he wants you to focus on like this endless space. But the
Mhm.
reason why is there's a reason for everything that he does is that when our minds focus on space, it actually creates, I don't know how he described it actually. I mean, I go to so many of his stuff, but
Mhm.
I don't remember everything. But he said that when you do that, I think it takes you almost to a different mind, mental
Brainwave.
frequency,
Mhm.
brainwave, when you start to focus on space.
Well, so yoga nidra, which we
Hmm.
had talked about previously, but yoga nidra, which is like a 5,000-year-old technique that the yogis came up with, um, it is about it is about that. It is about slowing down your brainwave to delta wave, which is what your brain waves would be like if you were in deep sleep. And
Hmm.
why do we love deep sleep so much? Because that's when we heal, that's when we process and calibrate and so on. Our organs are doing their cleaning up and all that. And it's so important. And it's definitely related to fertility, that deep sleep state. And yeah, with Yoga Nidra, we're purposefully going there but being conscious when we're there. So it's an experience that we would never do. We would never get to that state on our own naturally. Like we'd either be in deep sleep or we wouldn't be in delta. So this is what I love about yoga nidra, and like you were saying, just even the concept of thinking about space or expansiveness, or you're in an airplane, you look out the window and all you see is infinite space. Like it never ends. It just goes on and on and on, right? That yeah, it does slow us down. It slows down the brainwave so we can get out of the gamma, or the like, what we're in right now talking.
Yes, and it also gives you a sense of freedom. You just feel this like
Mm.
sense of peace and freedom from that
Hmm.
space, because then you're like, there's just so much, and there's so many possibilities, and it's open. And
Yes.
so, for people actually who have not heard of Yoga Nidra,
Mm.
can you explain what it is exactly?
Okay, so Yoga Nidra, like I said, it's thousands of years old. It has so many benefits. I mean, it's so many, like deep healing, but also like physical deep healing, but also mental, emotional. So it takes, sort of these deeply ingrained, maybe even ancestral patterns that we have. We can start to change those patterns. The body can process all of those things. It's the soma, we say in yoga. It's the sweet nectar.
Hmm.
It's the nectar that we want, to for our bodies, especially during fertility, but also to for overall health and longevity. We want to have that sweetness and that nectar in us. And what I use it for, I do a ton of yoga nidra in classes. Um, it is a progressive deep relaxation technique. It has been, Huberman has taken it and called it non-sleep deep rest because it's more palpable to Western mind. So it's been an eye rest and all these things. So it's yoga nidra has been taken and repackaged in many different ways, for our Western minds. I love the traditional one, of course. I'm sure you probably do too. And yeah, you go progressively to put your body to sleep. So you go through body parts and you relax those body parts, and we can instill or implant a message. We call it sankalpa, but you can call it whatever you want. Affirmation, it's not quite the right word. Intention, maybe, of like what deep healing you want to happen. And that's sort of implanted throughout the deep relaxation part. And then yoga nidra is actually a state. It's not the progress of getting there. So yoga nidra is when your body's asleep, you're conscious, but your brain is in these sort of delta waves. And sometimes you get there, sometimes you don't. And sometimes the journey is joyful to get there too, right? So it's not like, oh, you have to get to that state to get any benefit. You're still getting all that parasympathetic work going on. The body feels safe and protected. And most people feel very blissful afterwards. They often say, oh, it's like hypnotic, that there's like this hypnosis. And my voice too, I think it's like low and like kind of slow and steady. They're like, oh, I just hear your voice and I start to relax, right? So it is a really powerful tool. If I were to choose one thing, like people say, what yoga pose should I do to help my fertility? If I could choose one thing, I would say do yoga nidra for at least 40 days straight.
Yeah.
And see what happens. I think it's perfect. And I have a program, 40 days, a 40-day program where you have the option to do yoga nidra every day if you wanted to, or meditation. So yeah, it's really powerful. Really, really powerful.
That is so cool. And I'm excited actually to have you as a guest contributor.
Oh, thank
to
you. I'm
my
excited.
Fertility hypnosis toolbox soon. I know a lot of listeners are probably on there. So you guys, I'll be very excited. I think by the time this is out, we're probably going to have it.
I'm getting it to you. I promise. I will do it. Like, I feel honored that you will allow me. Yeah, I know.
Of course.
But I wanted to make it, this is me. I want to make it, I don't want to just maybe take an old recording that's, been out there for a while. Like, I want to make new things for you.
Oh, that's nice.
And also, like, where do we need the yoga nidra the most? Like the 2-week wait, perfect time.
Yes, for
after
sure.
loss. So like, I want to theme them so that there's like, it hits home for what people need the most.
Well, I'm so grateful for that. And I'm grateful for this conversation. I think this is awesome. I can nerd out on this stuff.
Oh, me too.
All day long.
Me too. Me too.
I think we're on the same page.
It's
fascinating.
Very nerdy about it. And
yeah.
And I mean, I know I love what you do, all the messaging that you're sending out there to those that are on this journey. I think it's so valuable and needed. Like, we need more voices that are like here, right? Like, here, like
the ancient stuff, kind of like the bridging that ancient wisdom, that ancient nurturing, really connecting with nature. Because I know that you also are a big fan of nature and being out in nature. And I think that really just kind of coming home to like our authenticity of as humans, like, and sort of the tribalness that, coming home to really our roots and the sacredness that we have also as women. I think that that's there's so much power in that. And I think that a lot of people are thirsting for that. And that's why I nerd out on this. I say it's like, I could say my brain nerds out. No, but I think my soul nerds out on it.
Oh, I love that. Yes, my soul nerds out on it. That is so good. I love that. I'm going to use it if I can.
Use it anytime. Well, Kerry, we had such a great conversation also on your podcast.
Yes. Coming out soon.
Yes, I highly recommend you guys check out her podcast, Fringe Fertility. It is definitely like something that I highly suggest, because you're going to get more of this amazing conversation on there. And she has other guests on there. So yeah, very cool.
Well, thanks for the shout out for the podcast.
Yeah,
thank you. Of course. Yeah. Well, it was a pleasure to be here today and share in this conversation. I could just do it forever and ever.
For sure. And also, before we go,
Mm.
how can people find you? What are the best ways?
Oh, sure. So yeah, I have a website, Fertile Body Yoga. So it's a virtual yoga studio dedicated to fertility. So fertilebodyyoga.com. That's probably the lead in place to find me. I'm on Instagram as well. I'm not a huge Instagrammer though. And lately I'm feeling like I just might need to walk away because for my mental health.
Yeah.
But I do
Sometimes
have an
that's good.
Instagram account. It is Fertile Body Yoga there. And yeah, like I'm always doing some great collaborative workshops, and I have a retreat coming up at the end of April. And you can cut this out if it's not the right timing, but so an in-person retreat in New
Awesome.
Hampshire at the end of April with two lovely co-creators. So that's the big thing. That is huge. This has been years in the making, and it's
Oh,
finally
amazing. That's
happening.
so
Yeah,
exciting. Well,
yeah,
congratulations. That's really cool.
yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Kerry, this has been a pleasure. And we really do have great conversations. I
I
could tell
know.
you that. We definitely are very aligned in a lot of the way we view the body and really view the fertility journey. And also, thank you for sharing your own experience and sharing
Mhm.
your story, because I think that a lot of people will be inspired by that as well. So thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.